Welcome to the S.E.M podcast. I am your host, Zack Hewlett, and today I'm joined by my guest host, Brennan Fish. Thanks for coming on and guest hosting tonight, Brennan. Our guest tonight is the one and only Kraig Rasmussen. Kraig, how are you, my friend?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's so good to have you. It's good to see your face. Where in the world are you calling from today?
From Elk Ridge, Utah. It's about 30 minutes south of Provo in Utah County.
Elk Ridge. Is that like in between like American Fork and a bunch of stuff, or is that further south?
It's further south, so it's like 15 minutes south of Spanish Fork and
Okay.
down by Payson, kind of tucked away in the foothills up here.
Sweet. What took you there? I'm curious.
So I have family in Santa Queen, and then my wife, her family lives in St. Pete County, which is like central Utah. So kind of just to be closer to family. And
Cool.
I think Salt Lake was a little too crowded for us. Both my wife and I grew up in like really small towns, and everywhere in Salt Lake County is just very congested, very busy, and just wanted some more space. And so we're down here.
That's awesome. Well, cool. Well, Kraig, have you been listening to the podcast? You got familiar with the format of what we've been doing with this?
Yeah, I've listened to a couple. I've listened to Brennan's, and then I listened to and then to Dan Conway's as well.
Okay, cool. Well, good. Well, just to give you a quick reminder, we'll talk pre-mission and anticipation of going to Scotland, post-mission to cover what you've been up to since then, and then we'll come back through the mission. So the floor is yours, my friend.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess growing up, my experience was probably pretty similar to most missionaries. I grew up knowing that I wanted to be a missionary. I remember, being in primary, and my favorite song was "I Hope They Call Me on a Mission," and I would sing that song with gusto. And I don't know, I always wanted to serve a mission, but I kind of had mixed feelings too, because I feel like at an early age I had some awareness that missions would be a difficult thing. And so I remember thinking a lot of times like, oh, a mission would be great, but oh my gosh, I'm going to be away from my family. I'll be in a place I've never lived before, and I might be speaking a language I don't know, talking to strangers, and thinking, you know what, we live in the latter days. People at church are talking a lot about the second coming. Maybe the second coming will happen before my mission, and so I always kind of had that as a hope in the back of my mind. Maybe that will happen, and what's funny is that like with life, there's always an experience that's on the horizon. That's a challenge, and that's it's going to be difficult. And right now, one of those things is my kids are getting older, and like the teenage years are just around the corner, and I kind of think about that, and I have the same thought. Well, you know what? Maybe the second coming will happen before they become teenagers. So there's still time. There's still hope.
Oh man, that's too funny.
But I, it's funny, when I got my mission call, my brother and I had very similar experiences. So my brother, he left on his mission about 4.5 years before I went on mine. And he, the night before he opened his call, we were hanging out with some of my friends and some of his friends, and asked the question, like, where do you want to go? And he's like, honestly, I don't care. Like, I'll go anywhere. It's like, except for maybe like that place where they eat dog, like the Philippines. And then you got called to the Philippines. And before I got my call, I remember talking to some roommates, and they kind of asked a similar question, and I said, I think I'd be good with anywhere except for maybe Europe. I think it's probably cold, but the people seem like they might be stuffy over there, and the work's probably really hard, and I'm like, I don't know if I'd want to do Europe, and then I get called to Scotland. But of course, like when you get that call, it's just the most amazing experience, and it's like you get a kind of a confirmation that that's where the Lord wants you, and little did I know that I was being sent to like the greatest mission and the greatest place on earth. But so yeah, that was a fun experience. I think I was trying to remember when I got my call. I think it was probably in April. I was up at BYU, Idaho. I did a year at school up there, and then returned and worked from home out of Colorado for the summer before I took off, and then did the mission thing, and then since I've been home, I went to the University of Utah. I got a degree in civil engineering. That's where I go Utes.
Go Utes, love it.
We beat up on Brennan's Sun Devils. A couple
It's a down year. It's a down year, guys.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
They're bound to get it right with like one of the next handful of coaches that they hire.
Yeah,
right?
no, they won't. They won't. They'll never get it right, man.
Oh man. It's too funny.
But yeah, I met my wife at the U, and now we live here down in Elk Ridge. We have 4 kids. It's constant chaos in our house. But yeah,
what age range are your kids?
So my oldest, Evelyn, is 10, and then I have a son. Well, I have three sons: Jack, Lewis, and then Theo, and they are 8, 5, and our youngest just turned 2 today. It's his birthday today.
Oh, nice! Happy birthday, Theo.
Yeah. You know what's funny is Devin Fisher. His nephew lives down here, and my daughter and his nephew have crushes on each other, and they've had crushes on each other for a while. And so I hear about Devin's nephew. Like, I know more about that kid than I don't know, probably his friends do, because that's all my daughter is capable of talking about right now is his boy. It's kind of funny.
Oh man.
Our kids are almost the exact same age, Kraig. It's too bad
really?
we don't live in Arizona. Yeah, we could hang out a lot.
Yeah.
My youngest just turned 2 less than 2 weeks ago. So.
Oh, crazy.
That's insane.
And remind me, what's the like how many boys, how many girls?
So we have 2 and 2. So my oldest is a boy. He's 11. Got an 8-year-old girl, 4-year-old girl, and then the 2-year-old boy.
Oh wow, yeah, that's crazy. Very, very
yeah, they're almost they're right on track.
Yeah,
you'd almost pair them off.
Almost.
Almost.
The boys at the end would be best friends.
Right. Yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome.
And Kraig, I probably know way too much about you and your family from your wife's Instagram. Like, I haven't talked to you in like 10 years, but I know all about your family.
Oh yeah, well, good. What's funny is like I'll talk, because I don't do social media stuff anymore. I think the 2020 election just did me in. I have friends on like both sides of the political spectrum, and it was too much. And so
amen to that.
Yeah, I'll talk to people and like, oh, I didn't know that your kid did this, and like I feel like people know more about my life than I do at times.
Oh man, that's too funny. All right, Kraig. So go back to the mission. What month and year did you enter the MTC?
So entered July 2004. Okay. And I remember thinking like when I got to the MTC, that like the thought that like I'm gonna probably end up with an awkward companion, like I just accepted it. And kind of bracing myself for it, and then get to the MTC, and we get assigned our companions, and we go, we're like unpacking our luggage, and it's kind of nervous, like being away from home, like in a different country and doing the mission thing, that's all new, and then thinking like, oh man, I'm gonna have like an awkward companion. And so I had a lot of kind of fears and some anxiety, and but when I got to the room and we were unpacking, found out that Brendan was my companion, and we started talking, and like all those fears and anxieties kind of melted, disappeared as I was talking to him. Felt like I was talking to, a friend that I've had for years. Brendan had that ability about him. Anybody who's had the opportunity to chat with Brendan, he's just so approachable and so kind and so cool that like you talk with him a little bit, and you immediately you feel comfortable, and I felt that with him, and thought, you know what, this whole mission thing, I think it's going to be all right. And so that was really cool. Being in the MTC with Brandon, had a good time, and some really incredible spiritual experiences. I liked our mission president. He was an older guy. I think we were like one of the last groups that he had, if I remember that right.
Yeah, Bodine, President Bodine, is that right?
Was that his name? I can't remember.
I think that was his name, yeah.
Yeah. But I remember, the stories of like he did one where he's talking about Joseph and Joseph that got sold into Egypt, and how he was tempted by Potiphar's wife, and he ripped off his coat and ran out of there. And he was like, what, 80 years old or something like that. And he like ripped off his suit coat, and as he was telling the story, and then just like ran out of the room. And he had this way of teaching, of just like doing these really extreme, wacky examples that stick with you. And like even to this day, like talking when we were studying the Old Testament, we have the the story about Joseph. Like that's what I taught my kids that week, and that experience of this older guy, and they thought it was so funny.
You know what, Kraig? You know what's funny about that? I remember that as well. But what I remember about it is I think I still had some jet lag, and I was nodding off. And I woke up to him like running by me in an aisle. But I remember that. Yeah, that's funny.
That, and then he sang his song "High Hopes," and he was talking about how we'd be discouraged in the mission, and we'd face a lot of rejection, and the possibility that depression will set in, and just discouragement. And, taught a lesson about the importance of staying positive and trying to be upbeat, and how that can change your mood. And it was, he would just like be in the middle of like a talk, and then he would like break character and bust out the room, or like didn't he like get on the piano and like start playing the piano and started singing?
I don't remember that. I remember the song that you're talking about, but I don't remember, jumping on the piano and singing and stuff. But
yeah, he was amazing, and he was also really good at putting missionaries in their place. I remember we had a night in the NBC, and there were a bunch of elders in our group that were in the halls, playing games, being kind of crazy, and luckily Brendan and I stayed in our room because we got called together, and I can't remember what he said, but like you could tell that dude was all business that night. Like, he was angry, and he was saying something about if you guys if you weren't involved in all the horseplay that went on last night, you can leave. And so like a handful of us got out of the room, and like so glad to be walking out of that room because he laid down the hammer that night. But that was a fun.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I don't think it helped. I think we had one of the largest groups they had there. And so there's just all this energy, all these 18, 19-year-old boys and all this, sorry, it wouldn't be 18 at that point, but 19, 20-year-old boys, all this energy. And I think I actually have some pictures in mind. I remember we did a tie trade one night in the hallway and, just trading ties. And I remember it being a really good time, but yeah, it could get a little rowdy for sure.
Yeah. It's funny. Like, I think there's a reason that like it's discouraged to have more than one set of missionaries in a flat is because of like this energy, like we're talking about, Brandon. So like just two companionships together can cause a lot of mischief, a lot of trouble. And so yeah, like you're saying, Brandon, you put 70 young immature boys, there's going to be some crazy things that go down. But it was an amazing experience. Preston's a cool place. And then my first area was Dunfermline. And I've heard you, Zach, when you were talking to Elder Conway, but I think you served in a lot of the same areas that I did. Like you kind of came in behind me and probably cleaned a lot of stuff up after I made a mess of things and then left.
Oh, no, don't say that. That's not true.
But I served in Dunfermline for 7.5 months. I really had like 3 areas. I had Dunfermline, and then I had Hamilton for 4.5, and then Dundee for 9, and then traveled the last little bit on a mission. So I consider myself pretty fortunate that like, Dunfermline and Dundee are some of the strongest wards in Scotland. And I don't know, I'm obviously very biased, but just from what other missionaries and what members say, it seems like those are 2 really solid wards that are missionary minded. And so I was really fortunate to be in those 2 areas. And Hamilton was great as well. We had Bishop Cameron, who was there, who was really enthused and jazzed about missionary work, and there's a lot of great members there too. So, but yeah, I was trained by Elder Chris Mace, the tall Chris Mace.
They were both tall. Come on, skinny or heavy Mace?
Skinny.
Skinny Mace. Okay.
And bless his heart, he was so kind to put up with me.
And he was pretty young in the mission, wasn't he?
I think he was, yeah. Yeah, I remember.
Had to been.
I remember President Vriens just telling me, how lucky I was to be getting a companion like him because he was really intelligent and really smart, and I learned a lot from him. President Vriens was right, like a very smart person, and also was really good at. I remember like one of the first times that we went out, chapping doors, him teaching me, like just because we know that we are part of the Restored Church of Jesus Christ, and we know that our church is Jesus Christ's true church. Like we need to be respectful of other people's religion when they say that they're not interested, and we don't push too hard, and we need to be respectful. And I don't know. I just remember kind of taking that to heart. That there's a lot of good people out there that have religion, and they have their beliefs, and we need to be respectful of that. And there's a lot of goodness in with other people and their faith. So he was a level-headed guy and like really intelligent. Liked working with him. I remember being so exhausted and tired. the first few weeks with him. And when I get really exhausted and tired, I have a tendency to sleepwalk a little bit.
Oh.
And I remember he woke up kind of in the middle of the night, and he looked over, and I was just like standing in the middle of the room, and it was just like kind of hunched over, was just looking at him, and it scared the crap out of him. He was like, "What?" It was like, Elder Rasmussen, you okay? Need anything? And apparently, I just like tilted my head, and I said, "How are you?" and then I got back in bed, and I just like went back to sleep. It was like, oh my gosh, that was really, really bizarre. That was a
oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Fun time. But we had a lot of really good success. He was really great working with the members, and we taught and baptized. There's a couple people. There's Margaret Dowie, Nick Hood, and then there was Amy McIver. I can't remember. But I know there were some people that we taught and baptized when we were there, and that was fun. You know, being companions with him. But I felt bad at I feel like as a young missionary, you're just so full of you're just so eager to work, and just like such a stickler to the rules, and a little judgmental if you don't do everything by the book and everything perfectly. And I'm sure I was definitely that way, but he was kind, and he was patient, and put up with my thick American accent and my sleepwalking, so it was all good. But after that, I had Elder Jump, and Elder Jump is the man from Kentucky. He grew up on a tobacco farm, if I remember, and he was a baller. So we like sports, like basketball, like playing basketball on P-Day, and like talking about basketball. And so he was a great companion. One memory with him that kind of sticks out, and I feel really bad, but I kind of don't at the same time, because it's really funny. I think we had gone to Edinburgh for like a combined zone conference or something, and we were about to cross the Firth to go back to Dunfermline, and he was driving the car, and we got up to the place where you put in a pound coin and you can cross the bridge, and he hadn't done that before, so he was a little nervous, and he was kind of looking around like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? And he was looking at me like, Craig, what do I do? And so I picked up a pound coin, and I gave it to him, and I just looked at him and said, "One for Dunfermline." And so he took the coin, and he hands it to the guy and says, "One for Dunfermline." And the guy, he just like taking people's money, and like people don't talk to him, right? He just takes the money, hits the button, and the gate goes up or whatever. And the guy stops and is like, "Wait, what?" And then Elder Jump I think he kind of had the word. It's like, wait, it doesn't matter where you're going. You're not getting a ticket to go somewhere. And so he was pretty mad at me the rest of that night, but I couldn't stop laughing. The rest of the night was kind of a jerk move on my part, but it's kind of fun.
Oh, that's too good. Oh my gosh.
I remember hanging out with you and Jump on P-Days. We'd play basketball a few times because I was in Glenrothes shortly. About 6 weeks after we started our missions, I transferred to Glenrothes with Elder Newman. And then Newman left and Chris Mace left, and I got Bautista and you got Jump. And then I remember hanging out a few times playing basketball. That was always nice to not use our feet as much.
Right.
Where did you guys play? Was it in one of the church buildings?
I think I remember playing in the Kirkcaldy church building. Do you remember that?
I think so. I do remember playing basketball, but I don't remember where. I just remember that was such a fun district.
Yeah.
Bautista and then I think Elder Rhodes. He was there. He was a pretty good baller too.
Oh, he was in Dunfermline with in the other companionship, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who his companion was.
Yeah, Rhodes could play ball too.
Yeah. But yeah, I just remember district meetings being really fun.
Yeah, and I don't remember. I think they still had the sisters in Kirkcaldy at that time. Sister McLean was there.
Yeah.
I don't remember who Sister McLean's companion was, though.
It was Sister McLean. Did she come out with us? Was she a part of our?
She did. Yeah, she was in our MTC group.
Her and Sister Malin, right?
Yep, that's right.
You said Sister Malin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think Sister Malin was from Canada. I want to say Sister McLean was English. She was from Chorley, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Both great sisters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
I had no idea that Jump had basketball ability. He'd never portrayed that to me. So.
Oh no, he was a point guard. He was a baller.
That's cool.
It was fun. And just like the most laid back, chill, easy to get along with guy for sure. It was a lot of fun. And then after Elder Jump, so I spent 3 months with Mace, 3 months with Jump, and then I had Elder Conway. And at that time, both of us had only been out 6 months. And that was like the most intense, like 6 weeks that I think I had on the mission. He just came in with a bunch of fire, and I think he was companions with Elder Patton before we were companions, and I can't remember where they were at, but I remember they'd done this thing where that they wanted to recommit themselves to the mission, and they put together a purification list, and Elder Conway introduced that to our companionship, and we decided that that's what we wanted to do with our companionship, and so we decided that we weren't just going to obey the mission rules, that we were going to try to go above and beyond, and try to do things differently that would invite the Spirit, and work so incredibly hard and have a lot of success. Those 6 weeks of work, I feel like he pushed me really, really hard. And what's funny is when I was serving with Brandon, we were serving together in Dundee. I feel like our first 6 weeks, like, we were okay, like we did all right. But like, I think we both recognized that we could work harder, we could do better. We're kind of at the point in our mission where I think fatigue had really start to settle in a little bit, and decided to do that same thing and put together a purification list and commit to some things that were going to make us better missionaries. And I think our second 6 weeks together was just a lot better. We were more focused, more committed, and all of that kind of stemmed, I think, from Elder Conway and Elder Patton, and kind of how they figured out to refocus and rededicate themselves, and that bled into my companionship with Elder Conway, and then later on with Elder Fish. So I look back and I'm very appreciative of Elder Conway and his testimony and his desire to serve, because it rubbed off on me. Sometimes I have the tendency to kind of match the attitude and the pace of whatever companion I'm paired with. Mm-hmm. And so I'm so grateful that I had that time with him, because he was just a little ball of fire and got me going, and look back at that time with him very, very fondly.
Yeah. Well, at that time too, I mean, you had to have been probably doing this with Elder Jump as well, but you probably were one of the first missionaries that taught Megan Hargreaves, right?
Yeah, yeah. Hargreaves were one of my favorite families. John Hargreaves. I'm trying to remember. You had an interview with someone that was talking about him. They described him perfectly. And maybe it was you.
It could have. I mean, he's. I'm trying to remember who we talked to that had served in Dunfermline, and I was trying to. I think it was. Oh my gosh, I'll look at it and I'll remember who the heck we were talking about. It was one of the older missionaries from myself.
Yeah, it was like, if I remember it right, it was like a hillbilly from the south that was just just got thrown into Scotland. I can't remember exactly how
I
it
want to
worked, but
say
however,
I want to say it was maybe with Elder Bataan, but I don't remember perfectly. So,
okay, yeah,
but yes, yes, I
super
remember.
funny guy, like massive beard, and they were a great family.
Yeah,
They're always so nice to the missionaries. You always felt so welcome there, and it's like one of those places where you kind of felt like you were at home,
hmm,
and you don't want to leave because when you're a missionary, you get a lot of rejection, and even when you get in the doors with some people, you almost feel like you're almost not wanted a little bit. It's like they're happy to have you in the house for a little bit, but like you
right.
don't feel completely relaxed and comfortable in their home. But it wasn't the case with that family. Like they just welcomed you in, and you just felt like part of the family. But
Yeah,
Megan, we started teaching her, I think maybe with Jonathan. Then I think things started to progress more with Elder Conway and I, and um, yeah, she's one that like I look back at the people that either they were baptized while I was there, or they were taught and then they were baptized, probably by you. Like I say, after you came in, kind of cleaned things up for me.
yeah,
But a lot of people that got baptized, I don't think stayed in the church. But she was one that um, I saw her. She posted on Facebook. It was back in the day when like people still wrote on each other's walls,
right.
and Megan Hargreaves had written on Monroe that Brendan and I taught in Dundee,
Oh yeah,
and she got
Galloply.
baptized. Yeah, and she was asking like, "Hey, are you going to this like stake dance?" And I just saw that they were kind of chatting back and forth, and that was an awesome moment because missions are hard, and like sometimes and I get that like part of the mission is that you're converting yourself and you're building your own life and all that, but like still you wanted some confirmation that you've had some of your effort has has had an impact in somebody's life for the good, and that was just a really awesome moment to see that like two younger girls that had the privilege of teaching my mission, that they were at least at that time that they were still active and had the gospel in their lives.
Yeah, I agree. It was a huge hats off moment for Megan, because if as you recall, I'm sure their family was kind of a mixed bag of those that were active and those that were kind of in between. But we were fortunate. We had um, John Senior, who we helped him come to church for enough consecutive weeks that he was authorized to baptize Megan. So that was a huge thing for us. Was like, hey, there's no one better to baptize you than your dad. And so he was willing to commit to that and make it happen, and that was an awesome thing for them. But you know, just the more time that we spent around their home, like you said, it was incredibly comfortable. It was a place where you knew that you were loved and wanted. And then we'd do other things with them, whether it was, I remember many times playing like keepy ups with the football out in like their in the front yard or in the street at the front of their yard. 'Cause I think they lived on like a cul-de-sac or a dead end street or something. So there wasn't many cars, but yeah, they're one of my favorite families from my time in Dunfermline. So I agree with you.
Yeah. Dunfermline is a great place. I actually went back to Scotland in 2019, and there's a lot of places that I wanted to see, more like the touristy type stuff that I hadn't gotten a chance to while I was in Scotland. So didn't have a ton of time. Spent a decent amount of time in Dundee, but I'm telling my wife, like, if we go back again, like Dunfermline is one of those places, like I want to go to church there and spend a little bit more time. We drove there and like we walked the city center for a little bit, and then I managed to find two of the flats that I stayed at while I was there, and that was kind of fun. But Dunfermline is a cool, really fun place, and it'd be good to go back there and talk with some of the members, because there's a lot of really great members and great people that have had a lasting impact on me. You know, we're lucky as missionaries that like we get the opportunity to be invited in so many members' homes, and we get to. I'm very observant, and I feel like I just observed so many families and like how, like, what the dynamics are with, you know, between husband and wife, and between the parents and their kids, and the spirit that's in their home. And I think of like you know, Paul Rand and you know, Bishop Lynch, Bishop Watson, and then Charlie Marr. So many, I could go on and on, but there's just people that are solid people that that kind of help you build a framework in your mind of like what you want your family to be like when you get back and you start your own family. So
yeah, absolutely, that's awesome.
Yeah, you know, I've thought about that a little bit too. How lucky we were to be in a place where missionaries were such a big part of the ward, right? Like, because the missionaries who serve in my area, they serve in like 5 wards, because there's so many wards around here. And I'll be honest, half the time I don't even know their names. That's my fault. My fault, not theirs. But it was just so awesome to be such a big part of a ward, and you got to know everybody, and felt like you were. A lot of times, I felt like it was a home ward.
right, yeah,
Absolutely.
It's very true, very true. Kraig, do you remember Brian?
Yes.
So Sprague brought him up, and I had completely forgotten about him. But do you remember the nickname that he had for you?
Elder Ramacha.
Elder Ramacha?
Ramacha. Started with an R, and then there was a lot of letters after that. It wasn't close to Rasmussen. I think it was.
Oh my
Ramacha.
gosh, that's too funny. Please tell me that you remember going to bingo and karaoke with Brian.
Oh yes. That came up the other day. I was talking to it was my brother-in-law. He was dating a girl, and she's from Ireland, and I was telling her that like there was this lady that's bingo, and I don't know if you served tea to her, but I always dreaded like going over to her table, because like, she had such a thick Irish accent, and she would like be making demands and asking for things. I had no idea what she was saying, and then she would get like more and more like frustrated with me, and like at the end she just like couldn't even deal with me. Like get out of here, you stupid American.
Oh my gosh!
Get out of my face.
Speaking of nicknames, who gave Conway the nickname of Conweasel? Was that you, Rasmussen? Do you remember that one?
I do.
Yeah. I don't know if...
Or maybe it was that guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
It very well could have been. I remember. I'm trying to remember if Brian used to call him... I think he used to call him Weasel, if I remember right.
Well, because Conway gave me the nickname Razzle.
Razzle. That's right. Yeah.
And it might have been me, or like maybe one of the other two missionaries that were serving with us at the time. I can't remember. Funny story about that. I remember we taught this like really nice elderly couple, and I think Elder Conway talked to me, like referred to me as Elder Razzle at one point. And at the end, we asked her to say a prayer, and she was praying for everyone and was calling them by name. And I think by the way I was folding my arms or something, that like my name tag was hidden, and she was like, and Elder Razzle, and then like you shouldn't laugh when an investigator is praying, but both Elder Conway and I was like, we couldn't stop laughing, like, and luckily they were nice people and didn't judge us for doing that, but had a lot of fun with him.
Man, Conway, he's so good.
Yeah.
He was good at giving people nicknames. I swear he had a nickname for everybody.
Right.
You know what? A good memory I have of him is when we first got to the mission and we go up to Pratt's Hill. We come down, and where we're parked was right next to like a pond or a lake, and there's these huge swans over there. And Conway goes over to a swan, and this big swan is like about to attack him, you know, and I've never seen a swan at that point. I'm from Arizona. We don't have swans. And this thing was bigger than he was, and he was not scared of the swan. I'm like, what are you doing? Anyway, I don't know why I remember that.
A core memory right there.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's too funny.
But yeah, so after Elder Conway I so badly wanted to serve another 6 weeks with him because I felt like things were rolling, and but then I got called to Hamilton with Elder Hawkins, and Elder Hawkins had been out like 3 months or so, and Elder Hawkins is a saint for putting up with me. I think about like my time with him, and when we were first called together, he had a cold. I think he had a sinus infection, and I had just kind of gotten off the high of serving with Elder Conway and like doing the purification thing, and like we're gonna chat and we're gonna GQ for 25 hours in the day type of mentality, and Elder Hawkins was he was pretty young on the mission. I think he had Elder Bass as a companion before me, and Elder Bass was amazing at had lots of people that they were teaching, and he was a very successful elder, and so it was a little bit of a transition for him, I think, coming from Elder Bass, and then we got put into Hamilton. We were whitewashed, and we had one family that we were teaching, but outside of them, we didn't have anybody who were teaching full. So our days consisted of a lot of finding, a lot of chaffing, and I was I should have been less strict with the rules. I feel like I probably extended his sinus infection for 2 weeks beyond what it should have been because of forcing him to go chap out in the rain. But he was a good dude to come along and to work hard. And I feel like it was kind of rocky at the beginning. I don't feel like we knew each other that well, but we served 4.5 months together. And I just remember, my experience with him that last 6 weeks. I felt like we got in the groove, we got in a routine, and started clicking as a companionship. And you could tell that when we taught lessons that that the spirit was there, and he became one of my one of my good friends in the mission, and an incredible missionary. Funny story though, with him. So I think this was like earlier in our companionship. We were like street contacting, and initially he would come with me and we'd street contact, and I was trying to encourage him, like, hey, you should do today like by yourself, and we'll just contact people separately. And I thought I was the man, and was just like stopping everybody. And I remember like all the tricks that he taught, or that other missionaries had taught, and I'm like holding out a pass along card as somebody's walking by. They look at it and like, oh, I noticed you're looking at my card. And like teaching, and it's like, I am just teaching all the lessons. I am just talking to all the people. Like, I'm going to have a lot of success today. And I looked over at Elder Hawkins, and he was kind of struggling to like get the courage to talk to people. I remember somebody would walk by and he would like kind of straighten up and take a breath, and then kind of last second, like, oh, like I'm not not going to do it. But at the end of the day, at the end of our time together, we get together, and he's like, oh, I was like, how did it go? He's like, oh, I talked to one lady, and I got an appointment. She wants us to go teach her at her house. And her name was Agnes. And she ended up getting baptized. She was like this Catholic lady that had been like very, 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 very diligent in her faith for 80 some years. And we went over and taught her, and she was just like so prepared, so ready, and just took everything in and ended up getting baptized. And
Wow.
I don't know, that's just an incredible experience. Thinking back about it, that was probably a really difficult thing for him to do, because he was kind of new to it at that time, but he had the faith, and he spoke up, and her life was forever changed because of that.
That's incredible.
Hamilton was fun. Winifred Tourette. When I went back to Scotland, she's one of the people that I went, and my wife and I spent some time with her, and she's great. She's wonderful.
How's she doing?
She's doing good. I think.
She's got to be getting on in age a little bit.
Yeah, I think she'd had some health issues, if I'm remembering that right. But when we visited her, she just seemed like her old self. Just really great woman, just so kind, and she's one of those that like we talked about, when you go over there, you're able to just relax and kind of be yourself and feel like you're in a home where you're wanted and where you're welcome, for sure.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I watched the World Cup final at her house.
Oh, nice.
Zinedine Zidane headbutted a guy while I was taking numbers because I was a district leader. It was probably not the best thing I could have been doing, but it's all good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she really did make it feel like home. Like I loved going over on Sunday evenings and playing games and having gospel discussions and just talking scriptures, and she was wonderful.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
and then from Hamilton went to Dundee, and my first companion in Dundee was Elder Sprague, and Sprague was good. He had a different perspective than most elders. He had a much more. I feel like when you're a missionary and you're trying to be so, down the line, you're trying to be, very obedient. It can be very easy to be judgmental of, other missionaries and other members that aren't doing everything by the book. But one thing that I learned from him is that he had this way of not doing that. He was like one of the least judgmental people that that I knew, and I felt like from him I learned, it's okay if people go to church and they're not 100% committed to the gospel, that they're coming with some things that they're dealing with. Like that's what the gospel is all about, right? Is we all kind of come in at different levels, at different stages, and have different things going on. No two tests are the same, and so I think he kind of helped open my eyes to that, to be more compassionate and understanding, and help me realize that the atonement is all encompassing, and it's for everyone. And so that's one thing that I learned from him, but also he introduced me to a game. It was Bakugan. I can't remember. It's like kind of like a Pokemon, a card game where like you played cards, and like that was like the thing that we did when we got back to the flat working. Like we planned the next day, and it was like, all right, let's plan the day real quick so we can get a good game in before we go to bed. And then like P-Day, we just play this weird game. And at first I'm like, you guys are, because I think it's Elder Allen and Elder Clausen like really got into it too. And at first I was like, you guys are such nerds. Like this, what a weird game. But then like by the end, I was invested. Like it was a fun game. And I'm pretty sure I was looking for my T-book before I got on this call. I couldn't find it, but I remember like Elder Sprague taped a card of like one of the cards that I got that like won a game one night. But he was a ton of fun. Then I had Elder Ford, and he was a good companion on the mission, and had a lot of fun with him. He was kind of similar to Elder Fish a little bit, in that like you could just instantly connect with him, and he could become anybody's friend. Elder Allen, I served with him for I think 3 months. I think I killed him. Like I think he went home.
Yeah, you did, because I replaced him.
Yeah. But he was good dude.
Hey, Kraig, were you a district leader before? Because you were zone leader with Elder Allen. Were you a district leader before that?
Yeah. When I was with Elder Ford, I was
okay,
district leader.
And you were in the Bingham ward that entire time?
Yes. Yeah.
So you just swap companions, but we're in the same ward? That sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was great. The Bingham ward, like, they're the real deal. They're legit.
Yeah, it was so good.
When I went back to Scotland, I went to the Bingham ward, and gosh, it was just, even like it had been years and years since I've been, but there were still people that just kind of make you feel like you're part of the ward still. It's funny, they're still kind. Like I'm sure most of them didn't remember who I was. But Keith Anderson, talked to him, and he claims he remembers me.
You're talking about President Anderson, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you got to do an impression of him. You had the best impression of him.
I don't remember doing an impression of him.
Like, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Gosh, I forgot that I did that.
Yeah, that was good. When I went back in 2015, they had a state conference going on, which was awesome because I served 7.5 months in Glen Rothes and 6 months in Dundee. So I got to see everybody at that state conference. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, he's incredible. And what's funny is when I was talking to a lot of the members, they're like, okay, well, help me remember, like, who were some of your companions? And so I'd list them off, and then obviously, like, my last companion was Elder Fish, and with all the other companions I listed off, I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds familiar. I think I remember him. And then I get and it said Elder Fish. Like, oh yeah, Elder Fish. Oh, he was lovely.
So lovely. You know what? That might not be. It might be because I was replaced by Elder Fisher, so they probably thought I was there for a year.
That's probably it.
Which Fisher? M&M Fisher or
M&M? Yeah. M&M.
Okay. Yeah. So did he just jump wards? Because he was in Lift, right?
Oh yeah, he was in the Lift Road ward. Yeah, I think he did. When I left, I think he ended up just switching over to Bingham to serve with Elder Hout.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Interesting.
But Dundee was awesome. Like when I went back to Scotland, we my wife and I did like the Stirling Castle. We drove through Dunfermline for a little bit, and then we ate dinner in Dundee. And I remember that first night being back, like my wife was just so tired. She's like, I'm gonna go to bed. And I was just like so filled with like excitement, like I'm in Dundee. And I couldn't sleep. And I was just so excited. I just had all this energy. And I was like, I just gotta get out. And so I started walking the streets, and it was awesome. Like the feelings that came back as I was walking on the streets, and just like the sights and the smells, and like seeing the River Tay, all that. Like it reminded me, of so many nights when, as a missionary, you're out there, and the days are hard. Like missions are no joke; they're tough. And but after like a really long, hard, exhausting day, that feeling of walking back to your flat and like seeing how beautiful Scotland is, and like just having this awesome feeling of like I did the Lord's work today, and like I did a good thing, that like the Lord is happy, or he's pleased with the work that I put in for that day. I would just get like, I'm sure all of us have those feelings of just like really sweet and peaceful, and I think the Preach My Gospels talks about like when you feel the Spirit, it's kind of like experiencing a foretaste of eternal joy that's to come. And I feel like, those nights when you walk back to the flat, you just had those feelings. And when I was kind of walking the streets, I was just kind of overwhelmed with emotion, kind of had that same feeling. And like I was crying. I was walking, like I was just so weird. I was just like so full of emotion. Like I just like had to walk really fast. I wasn't going anywhere. Like I was just walking the streets and just like being in Dundee and just kind of experiencing it all. And people were walking by, and like I'd have to like compose myself a little bit and like stop crying. And like I'm sure people were so weirded out when they walked past me if they could see my face, and like holding back tears. But gosh, I love Dundee, and love serving with Elder Fish. And I just remember us. I mean, I had some great spiritual experiences, but I also remember like we laughed a lot.
I remember, yeah, we laughed a ton, and I remember never, sometimes you get annoyed with little things with a companion or whatever. I remember never being annoyed with Elder Rasmussen. He was just so easy to get along with. And we got along so well that it was just like we were best friends, since we were kids. And it was fun to just hang out all the time.
And there is one thing that I did that I know annoyed you. You know what I'm going to say?
No, I don't.
No.
I'm curious.
So I didn't realize it, but I like every morning I would eat a bowl of cereal, and I'd have a big spoon, and I would just try to like get the whole bite of cereal and milk, and I would slurp the milk. And I remember like not being aware that I did that I like was a slurper when I ate my cereal. But like I think we'd been companions for a little bit, and And finally, you're like, oh my gosh, Elder Rasmussen, can you please just like not slurp when you when you eat your cereal? And so since then, I'm like, every time I take a bite of cereal, I always got to be really careful. Like, I'll still slurp just like out of habit. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm slurping, and so I have to like change.
I'm sorry.
So no,
you know what? It's funny because I do the same thing to my kids now. So,
but my wife doesn't know it, but she probably is like very grateful that we're honest in that moment.
Dude, I have a lot of funny memories, so I got a couple I want to bring up if that's okay. So
yeah, absolutely.
First one. So I got transferred to Dundee. So Elder Allen had left, and I got transferred to Dundee right before Christmas. It was like 2 days before Christmas. And I remember for Christmas, I think it was Christmas dinner, or maybe it was right after, maybe it was New Year's. We went over to the family who lived over the bridge on the other side. They had the teenage boys. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Do you remember? I don't remember their names. I remember their boys were, they had long hair, loved metal music. Anyway.
Andrew.
Yes.
Well, yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Well, anyway, their dad, they had just gotten this pool table thing. Well, it was foosball, and then you could put a lid on it or a top to play like little pool. Well, we were playing, I can't remember what we were playing, but we had taken one of the pieces off and set it next to it. And we were playing this game where you kind of run around it and hit the ball. And Elder Rasmussen stepped on the piece that was on the ground and just crushed it. And they had just gotten it for Christmas. And do you remember this? He was so mad at you. He was so mad at you.
I've never felt like more low in my life after that. Like, I just ruined this family's Christmas. Like, they were so excited for this foosball table, and I just snapped one of the little poles in half.
Oh man.
And yeah, he didn't hide his emotion. Like,
he didn't.
It was very upset. very, very, very horrible.
Oh man, that's too funny.
I actually remember being a little surprised at how stern he was about it.
Yeah, it caught me off guard. I was just like in shock. Like, oh my gosh, I just did this, and oh my gosh, he really yelled at me. And this is like one of the nicest guys that I've met. Like, because we would go over to their house quite a bit and hang out. I remember.
Yeah, it was like a 3-hour DA every time we went because it was so far away.
Yeah. Yeah, that was fun. And then I just remember doing a lot of voices, like with you. There's a sister that kind of talked a little bit differently, and she would always call Sister Smith, if you remember her.
Yeah.
Hey, Maureen, how's it going, pal? Just calling to make sure you're all right. Anyways. Hope you have a good day. Cheerio. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. I think you guys were both influential in me taking on the phrase, "Oh, tip." Do you guys remember that?
Oh, yeah. You know, I got that one. It was Elder, I know I got it from Elder Asariato.
That's right. I knew it was from Kofi.
He used to say tip all the time.
I forgot about that one. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember all your voices. Another one, another story, and I'm sorry this isn't necessarily like work related, missionary work, but so one thing I didn't share on my podcast. So I had a pretty serious girlfriend coming out. And so I think around my year mark, I got Dear John, right? Which was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. It was great. Obviously for now that I'm married, it's fantastic. But even on the mission, it was great because I felt like it wasn't a distraction, but it really was a distraction. And so once that was gone, I felt like I served a lot better. But anyway, so that was in, I think it was June or July, so right around my year mark. Well, I still had those photos of her when I got with Elder Rasmussen in December of that year. I had them for like 6 months. And I remember one night we just decided to have this burning of the pictures. And so I have this video I remember on like a CD I have of Elder Rasmussen ripping up these papers and going, Wildcats, because my high school mascot was the Wildcats, and you go, Wildcats rock. And he was just tearing this thing up. And then we set it on fire. He was influential in helping me get over.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
Ripping the pictures wasn't enough. It was like the sound effects and everything.
Yeah, I think you were like, you ate one too. I remember. I have a video of you eating one.
Oh my gosh. I don't remember that, but I don't doubt it. That was pretty weird.
Oh gosh.
Rasmussen, who do you remember us teaching there?
Kylie Kelby.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's that couple. I think you talked about them with your interview thing. They're like the born again Christian couple.
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And our road trip we took.
Yeah, I was trying to remember because you talked about how like we got split up in separate cars, and then somehow I ended up with like a girl our age.
I think they sent both of us together in the same car, but it was just the three of us.
Oh, really? I thought I was by myself.
Maybe you were.
Because I remember like thinking like, oh my gosh, like this is so awkward. Like we're breaking the rules, and we're like, no, I can see the back of Brennan's head. So we're not separated. I think we're good. But I do remember like the dread, like because I thought the way they described it was just going to be us and then them.
Yeah.
And then like we show up and it's like, oh, all these other people from your church are going on this thing too. And I don't know if it was like a seatbelt thing or like a couple, but like we couldn't be in the same car for whatever reason, and we weren't going to be like, okay, well, sorry, we tried. Like we wanted to like have this like experience with them, but yeah, it was just like when that moment set in, we're like, we're not going to be able to ride in the same car. I'm going to have to ride in this car with this girl that's my age. And I can't remember if it was just like me and her, or if there was like another person in the back, but I remember it was just like, this isn't following mission rules. But it worked out just fine. They're great. So it's them, and then the Jelly Monroe, and then John, yeah. And apparently John, I didn't know this, but like he stayed faithful after we taught him, and he started to come back to church, and he was even, I think he was in the bishopric. That's what
wow,
Bishop or President Anderson was saying, and that he was just like really, really great, and I think he's passed away.
Yeah, I think he did too. I think it was Elder DePole that ended up being the one to rebaptize him.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a good dude.
Yeah. Do you remember Alf, who was Sister Snee's dad?
Uh-huh.
So when I went back in 2015, I went and had dinner. My wife and I had dinner with the Snees, and we were eating, and Alf, his mind had definitely started to, he had forgotten a lot of things. And as I was leaving, I was like, "Oh, good to see you again, Alf." He's like, "I've seen you before." He was just like, yeah, we used to go on teaches together.
Yeah, you screamed at me one night.
Yeah, he did, which was deserved. It was deserved because we were ditching out on an appointment to go to meetings with the stake president and the mission president, and ended up learning from that experience and learning that the work was more important than just sitting in meetings and finding a way to make it happen.
Yeah. I'm very glad that you took that call. And I've been yelled at enough at that point with breaking foosball tables and such. Couldn't handle anymore.
One of the other things I remember, so obviously we were zone leaders together, and I think it was after about 6 weeks that our area was doing really good. Zack, I remember you guys. I think that was around the time you guys had like 5 people committed to baptism, right?
Yeah,
and there were just our zone was on fire. Because I remember going to zone leader conference, and you stand up and you have to report what your zone is doing, and our zone was just like killing it, and just thinking like, this has nothing to do with us. Like, I don't know what it is about why the zone is on fire, but just feeling blessed that we were having that opportunity and how great things were going and how much fun it was to have that success at that time.
Yeah.
We had a really great zone, right? It was, I don't even remember what we did for zone activities or anything at that point in time, but like we just had so many great missionaries that we were around all the time. And I think that bred the contagious nature of, hey, get out and, work hard and do the things necessary in order to really stretch ourselves, right? And I remember at that juncture in time, it was kind of like the last few months of President and Sister Vriens in the mission. They just asked us, and I think both of you had learned from your zone meetings or your zone leader meetings, talking about like committing people earlier to things and then kind of progressing them towards that ultimate decision, which was to be baptized. And there was just a lot of positive things were happening in the mission at that point in time, which it was fun to be in the Dundee zone when that happened.
Yeah.
You guys were great leaders too. It was easy to follow what you guys said because we had a great time when we were doing things together.
I think things probably really took off after I left. And so that, like, looking back, that was probably the key, if we're being honest.
Hey, stop being humble. Come on. Elder Rasmussen, were you there when you guys remember Elder Loganberg?
Yeah.
I don't remember who his companion was, but I can't remember if it was with you, Rasmussen, or how. But got a call one morning that Elder Loganberg's like, I can't find my companion. He's gone. And it's like, what? What do you mean? There's I think it was a P-Day morning. And so we're like, what are you talking about? So we get over there as quick as we could. At that point, we didn't have a car because you had a license and so you left, and Elder Hout and I, neither one of us had a license. So anyway, we got over there and his companion had just taken off.
Oh, wow.
And so we had people at the bus station, and I can't remember who this companion was, and I probably wouldn't mention it even if I could remember, but people at the bus station, at the train station, just trying to figure out where this guy was. And so we were hanging out in the flat waiting for him to come back. And so we decided to walk back to the courtyard, and there he was, just hiding behind something. And he came out and he's just like, it was awkward. He's like, well, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? And turns out, I think he wanted to go home. And so we're just hanging out in the flat, all of us. We're kind of giving him his time. And I remember we're like playing hacky sack in the flat, and all of a sudden we hear the door shut, and he had taken off again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so as you got out, you could either go left or you could go right. And if you go left, it's out to the street. Right is this massive courtyard. And so I decided to take a right. And as I got into this big open courtyard, I saw him running over. There's just like a little hill there, and he stopped and he like laid down because he was trying to hide from us. And I caught him, and I'm like, dude, what's going on? So it was the weirdest thing. I remember President Vriens was like, just send him down here. So they went down, and President Vriens was able to convince him to stay on his mission. He was a nice guy. He was an English missionary, but just, I think at that point he just wasn't feeling it. But President got him to stay. I think the kid ended up staying the rest of his mission, but it was kind of a weird experience for me.
Yeah.
Jack and I are talking to Loganberg this week, so I'll ask him about it.
Nice. Yeah. Loganberg was awesome, man. He was so funny.
Yes, he is.
That reminds me of, I think Elder Grant had a similar story, right? Like, early in his mission, I think he tried to go home and then was convinced to stay out in the field, and he became like the most powerful missionary that
he was great.
I worked with. He was a traveling elder, and I got him twice when I was younger. Once when I was with Conway, but then once when I was with Elder Hawkins, and now he's the bishop. And well, at least when my wife and I went back, he was the bishop of the Bingham Ward. He married Keith Anderson's daughter Jill, and so my wife and I went to dinner with he and his wife, and it was so great catching up with him. Such a solid dude and like wonderful bishop. And so yeah, it's funny. Like it'd be interesting to hear like what the story is of that missionary, that, you know, if you have like a similar kind of turnaround moment. And
yeah,
we'll figure out who it was when I talk to Loganberg.
Yeah.
And Elder White is coming on in the future too. Nice. He said he's slammed with stuff here towards the end of the year, but we'll get him on in the next few months. I know that.
Right on.
So yeah. Well, Kraig, after you were done with Brennan, where did you end up again?
So I ended up with Elder Christensen, and we were traveling missionaries.
Okay.
For 3 months. We were kind of all over the place, and I think the first 6 weeks it was kind of a mix of, you know, spending time with younger missionaries that had the desire to be good missionaries, but just hadn't had the experience. And then we were assigned to companionships with elders that just needed a little bit more encouragement. And so that was like the first 6 weeks. And then the second 6 weeks, we ended up spending time with all just like we had a lot of young companionships, and we spent a lot of time with them. And that was a crazy experience. Elder Christensen was amazing. I didn't really know him. I hadn't served around him. I'd heard a lot of stories, you know, that he was a great football player. And it's funny, I'm actually became friends with his best friend that he went to high school with. And I think his friend was the quarterback, and Elder Christensen was a receiver in high school, like in a small town in Utah. And anyway, that kind of small worlds. We ended up being in the same ward as his old best friend, and then we became friends. But Elder Christensen, I just heard that he was an incredible football player, and they played football like at his own conference, and he caught a pass and like slid on his head. I just remember that story circulating a lot. But he was one of the smartest guys I think I've ever met. Just incredibly intelligent, but also really hard worker, very, very smart, and very, very spiritual. And gosh, that 3 months together was so rewarding, because we worked so hard that it was exhausting, because we're going into, you know, companionships where you had these young, eager missionaries that were just like wanting to take advantage of the time that we were there. And so it's like, let's not take lunch breaks. And we were, because we were like jumping around like every 3 or 4 days with different companionships, we couldn't like we had to buy our own food, but we couldn't buy like refrigerated food. We lived off like canned food and food that like, and I remember like at the end of those 3 months, Sister Vriens, she looked at me and she was like, "Oh my gosh, Elder, like you look horrible." I think I had lost like 10 pounds because just not eating, skipping a lot of lunches, and like working through dinner break sometimes too to try to maximize the amount of good that we were doing with each companionship was very rewarding, but also like physically and emotionally just exhausting.
Yeah.
But Elder Christensen was a fun guy. We got a lot of time to just talk about life, like in between spending time with different companions. I remember we were so exhausted. Like we pulled up to one flat where we're waiting on some missionaries coming back from a member's appointment, and like we had just a little bit of time. And I looked over, and Elder Christian sat down, and then like the next minute he was like passed out, and like, oh, poor guy, he was tired. And then like a couple minutes later, I was passed out, and like missionaries came home, and both of us were just like conked out because it was just very physically and like mentally draining period. But it was a lot of fun.
What areas of the mission were you in when you were traveling? Was it like kind of isolated with certain zones, or were you all over the place?
It was all over. Yeah, so we were like in the Glasgow zone and Dundee. We spent some time up north, spent some time in Edinburgh. Like we were just all over the place. So that was actually pretty cool because, like I said, I'd only served in like Dunfermline, Hamilton, and Dundee, which the three aren't that far apart from each other. So I hadn't really seen Scotland, and I remember we spent some time with Elder Marsh, and then struggling to remember who his companion was at the time, but like they were up in Inverness, and Elder Christensen's like, "We got to go to Inverness," like for 2 reasons, like younger companionship, but like we got to get up north and like see the country a little bit. So that was a lot of fun, a lot of great stories and experiences from that for sure. And then the last 6 weeks I was with Elder DePold, and that was good. And I felt like I thought about this. Like I felt like my last 6 weeks, they were kind of rough, just because I was so depleted, like physically, mentally, and I think it was just time for me to go home. It was a little overwhelming. Being in the office and like not really knowing what I was doing, and knowing that like I wouldn't have the chance to do it again the next 6 weeks. I was kind of pushing through a learning curve, and was like, okay, you get through this learning curve and then you go home. And I think that was good for me because I think probably all of us experience it to one degree or another. Like you spend so much time as a missionary that you feel like you become Elder Rasmussen or Elder Fish or Elder Hewlett. Like that's your identity. Mm-hmm. And the thought of going home and like being somebody else is really, it gave me a lot of anxiety thinking about it. But I think that experience was good for me because, at the very end, I remember we stayed at the this like bed and breakfast place pretty close to the mission home, and I think Elder Fish and I like kind of stayed in the same room or whatever. And
yeah, we did.
Which was awesome. Like what a way to leave. Like we came in together and then we left together. Like that was like really awesome for me. And I just remember telling you, Brian, like, yeah, I used to be so afraid of like the thought of going home, but I'm ready, dude. Like it's time to be done, and time to move on. And I think it's been really like reassuring to me, like hearing other people's experiences, because like my experience isn't unique. I think I've heard from other missionaries that have a lot of respect for, and where I've heard that like their last 6 weeks it was a struggle, and I think that's maybe like the Lord's way of like helping you transition and move on to the next chapter of your life. But yeah, and Elder DePaul was wonderful. He was a really great leader, a really great friend, and I actually caught up with him several times after the mission. He would come out to Utah and we'd hang out for a little bit. And he's a good dude, good friend.
Yeah, he was awesome. Well, and that last 6 weeks would have been when President Vriens left and President Fredrick came in, right?
Right, yeah.
Which would have made that weird as well.
Yeah. It's kind of like the blind leading the blind a little bit. I'm really glad Elder Cold was there because I didn't know what I was doing. They didn't know what they were doing, but we kind of, all of us had to lean on Elder Cold and think back to, like, you know, he's just a natural leader, right?
He is
so comfortable and so sharp and just really intelligent. And I think that he, you know, there's a good possibility that, you know, that he was sent to that mission for that exact moment, is to help make that transition and provide the leadership while that transition is taking place.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree too.
Leaving, I think Elder Conway talked about this, but leaving was really weird. Having an exit interview with the mission president who you've met like twice, you know. Yeah. I actually, my president interviews the 6 weeks before, so I was like, President Vriens, you got to give me an exit interview because I'm not going to have a proper one by President Fredrick. Nothing against him, he just didn't know us, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Very true. I felt the same way, and I had 6 months with him, so I can only imagine what you guys felt. Speaking of President Sister Vriens, Kraig, what are some of your favorite memories of them?
I think of Sister Vriens, it's been shared multiple times already. When we were first in our first day in Scotland, and we had the prayer, and Elder Conway was sick and upstairs, and she couldn't remember his name, and said, "Please bless Elder," whatever his name is, upstairs, and just started laughing, and afterwards, like, all of us missionaries are kind of laughing, like, you know, the mission president's wife just laughed during the prayer, and like President Vriens was very, very serious, and it's kind of a awkward moment because you wanted to laugh, but then you look at the mission president like, oh, he's not laughing. Like, what should I do? But she was so much fun. You know, there's the zone conferences were always great with her the pig costume that she would put on, and she was just always had a way of like making you feel comfortable and relaxed, just, you know, by how approachable and goofy she was. She was wonderful. President Vriens, I don't know. I feel like I always struggled to get to know. I think, especially as a young man, I always was intimidated by people that were in a position of authority. Like, I kind of put up a barrier where I wasn't able to connect with him just because I wasn't able to relax. But I'm really grateful that I had 3 weeks with him in the office, and my experiences with him are probably different than most. Like, I don't feel like I was ever really to let my guard down and like allow him to get to know me as a person, as a missionary, and so I don't have any experiences where like we had a heart-to-heart talk and he shared like this wonderful advice. But I am an observer, and I just remember in the mission field, like, he was the first one to wake up. Like, we'd wake up at 6 a.m, and I'd hear things going on outside, and I'd look out the window, and he's out working in the garden, like working in the, you know, the landscaping beds. And then as we're getting ready to go to bed for the night, I'd walk, you know, down the mission hall, and I'd see his light in his office still on. That dude could work like no other. And, you know, even like at his age, I don't know how old he was when we were there, like in his 70s, I'm guessing. But he had a drive and he had a, you know, work ethic that was unmatched. He, you know, obviously very successful and in the church and in life because of how incredibly hard that guy worked. And so when you pair the work ethic with the love that he had, he was just like the ultimate mission president, right? He's incredible, really awesome. We're really fortunate to have him.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. Well, Kraig, we appreciate you coming on, taking time. Is there anyone else? I mean, you've mentioned some great missionaries that we still haven't gotten on here. A couple that have come on, but a few to be determined. Is there anyone else that you can think of from the mission that you'd love to hear from as we continue with these podcasts moving forward?
Yeah, I think Devin Fisher, for sure. I know everything about his nephew. It'd be fun to know a little bit more about Devin and what he's up to. I ran into him. We hung out a couple times, and then we kind of lost contact. So it'd be good to hear from him. I feel like he's the one missionary that like I wasn't companions with that I knew the most because we just happened to be serving in the same areas and did a lot of exchanges together. He's one of my faves. And then two, like Sister Roberts and Sister Kenny. They some of the like most when I was in Dundee as the district leader, they were just phenomenal missionaries, and it was really hard being a district leader having them in your district because you're like supposed to have the best numbers, but they just crushed everyone every single week because they're just hard workers and they just were really far superior missionaries than any of us were. It'd be good to hear from them. There's three that come to mind. Elder Wilkie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Wilkie.
He was in your group, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
Okay.
And then Elder Lineker.
Okay.
We were in the same group, but I don't feel like we ever really served around each other that much. And I remember talking to him like towards the tail end of the mission, and I can't remember what the saying was, but he shared a spiritual thought about Nephi, and like it was just very, very powerful. And I remember thinking like, dang, that's a shame that we didn't get to serve around each other that much because he seemed like he was a really good missionary and good dude. So it'd be good to hear from him.
Okay.
Yeah, if I think of any others, I'll shoot you an email or something. But
for sure,
those are ones that come to mind.
I'm sure you'll have more that will come flooding back with more and more.
And by default, like all my companions, I'd love to hear from all of them.
For sure. Is there any of them that you're in more contact with than others, or is it all kind of hit and miss?
To be honest, like I'm not in contact with anyone. Like with not having social media, like I feel like when I was keeping in touch, that's how I was doing it.
Okay.
Was Facebook. Like Devin Fisher and I, we would like, you know, Facebook had that feature where you could poke people. Like
yeah,
we like would poke each other like every 2 weeks, and that carried on for like 2 years. And like that was kind of the extent of my like interaction.
That's too funny.
Yeah.
Well, I can assure you, Sister Kenny is scheduled. We'll talk to her at the end of October.
Nice.
I've talked to Devin Fisher. He's in the midst of moving his family into some temporary housing while they build a new home. So he said, we'll get in touch in the near future. I have connected with Jared Lineker, but he has not committed to participate yet. So we'll see what happens there. Elder DePold said he'd come on.
Oh, nice.
We talked to John O'Brien, and he said that Paul Christensen is in his ward in Houston. So hopefully we can get a connection there and get him on.
Awesome.
I've talked to Jason Ford. He has not committed, but his words were, "This is not my thing." So we'll see if we can try and pry it out of him. We'll see what happens. I haven't been able to get in touch with Colby Hawkins. I've reached out to him, but I haven't gotten in touch. And Chris Mace, Skinny Mace, said he would come on. He's just started a new job, so he's a future guest in the future as well. And I haven't reached out to Scott Jump, though. I need to reach out to him. And did I mention DePold? He's coming on. He'll be on in the future too.
Nice.
Yeah, you mentioned.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's
That's
just
a
a
great
laundry
list.
list. There's a laundry list of them, and yeah, you mentioned some great names. I have also talked to Sister Roberts about coming on, and she'd be willing to participate. I caught her at the beginning of summer holidays, and so we'll see what we can do to get her on here in the near future too. But
Yeah, I started around her as well in the air, and Sister Kenny. But yeah, they were both awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool. Well, Kraig, thanks again for taking time. It was so good to catch up with you. It's great to see your face and know that things are good. You're just a busy dad, which is awesome. Good for you.
Yeah, well, it's great seeing both of you guys. And Zach, thank you so much for doing this. This is incredible. I know it's got to be a ton of time to be reaching out to people and doing all of these, but like the few that I've listened to, like they've been fun to go down memory lane and hear other people's experiences. But it's too, it helps brings you back into that place when you were a missionary and you're able to revisit all the spiritual experiences that you had and just the positive thing that a mission was in so many of our lives. So it's awesome that you're doing this. I talked to a couple of people and told them that I was doing this, and like, man, that's such a good idea. So thank you, man, for you and
Jack,
Jack, for doing this. Brandon, it's really good seeing you.
Hey, you too. Maybe we should start a podcast together so we can see each other more.
Yeah. Great idea.
Yours could be the spin-off, the Dundee Zone Leaders. Oh my gosh.
Get like 2 people that view it every week.
And it'd probably be our wives.
Yeah.
I don't know. If you send it to me, I'd listen. No, it's been honestly a huge, I've mentioned this before, but it's been a huge labor of love. I mean, there's nothing better than reconnecting with amazing people that we had the privilege to spend what seems like a flash in our memories together. But, in that time that we were together, we have lasting bonds, and we're all brothers and sisters in Scotland because, that was who we were. And like you said, Kraig, it was a huge identifying part of our lives for that period of time. And, we all often reflect back on it with such fondness and positivity that there's nothing better than talking about those things. And, Jack and we're kind of spoiled by the fact that we get to talk to everybody. You guys get to listen to a few of them. And I'm glad that Brennan came back on to talk with you tonight. But ultimately, it's just fun to see like where we all fit. Like I said, fit like, when Conway, when you left Dunfermline and I came in, and, just kind of the intertwined nature of our missionary service is pretty fascinating. And, but I've loved every second of it. Jack has loved every second of it. I have had quite a few of the younger missionaries that I had an impact on me after you guys had gone home that we've talked to quite a bit in recent weeks. And I feel bad for Jack. We got to get some of our older hats on in the future because Jack's like, I don't even know who these guys are. So, but we'll get there. And it's just, it'll take time, and we'll get in front of more people. And but it's been awesome. We've really enjoyed every second. So, thanks again for taking your time, Kraig. And we love you and are so grateful that we can call you our brother in Scotland. And we'll certainly be in touch much more frequently than we have.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good night. Love you.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.